I want to welcome everybody here today. Is my voice being heard?
Yes.
Yes? Thank you all for coming out. It's really a special day. This is my final talk of my senior fellowship here at the National Museum of African Art. And I want to extend my deepest thanks to all the staff with whom I've worked this year. It's been a wonderful, exciting year. I've learned a lot about Africa, about museum work, about the Smithsonian, and I've met a lot of great people I've learned from, and I thank you all. Foremost to our beloved director, Janetta Cole. You really made me feel at home here, and I know that the other staff feel the same way about you. It's truly an honor to serve under you. To our deputy director, Chris Kramer, who brought a lot of support to this event today. I thank her also. To Amy Staples, the chief archivist at the Ellis Offen Photographic Archives. We've worked closely over this year, and I really came here because of the photographs in this archive. And I believe the projects we've started this year are going to continue into the future, and I pledge to do all I can to maintain our relationship. I'm on my way to teach in the Department of History at the University of Calabar in Nigeria. And it's really wonderful for me, as someone out there in the world, to have a place I can bring my things back to, so that they're shared in such a place as this. I want to thank Mary Jo Arnaldi, who was one of my supporters this year. I must thank Ekpe USA, who you all know by now. When I applied to be a senior fellow here, Ekpe USA wrote a letter of support. We want this kind of work to happen. And the EFIC National Association of EFIC-speaking people, Calabar people, also wrote. And this is the kind of work we're trying to bring here, to share publicly advanced scholarship about African heritage in the Western Hemisphere. And I believe very deeply that the information brought by Africans over the 500-year period of migration, of forced migration, can teach us a lot about African history because of what's happened in West Africa with the colonialism, the humiliation of the traditional culture, and people are struggling to find this question of identity, which we're going to see today. The Cubans have held on very fiercely to this African identity. And so I'm going to talk a little bit and show you some images. I am here to work on a book, and it's turned out to be a photographic book. The book is thematically organized into issues like gender, the problem of staffs, what do the staffs mean, the drums, and other things like that. So I'm going to show you some of that very briefly, and then we're going to have some chanting, some dancing, some drumming, and none of this has really been rehearsed. We're just kind of all here together in family. So I want to thank you all for supporting this kind of thing. Let me just start with a little bit of introduction. Where is Cross River? This is the Cross River. region in southwest Nigeria, southeastern Nigeria, southwest. And the river for hundreds of years acted as a highway of merchandise, but also of culture going up and down. And this is the region where the Ekpe leopard society is found. And from there it's extended into other places in the world like Equatorial Guinea and Cuba and other areas. We're still doing research on this. And this is a shared cultural space where there is a leopard society known as Ekpe by the Efiks, or Mbe by the Balondos, or Mbe in Bayang, and so on. But there are also many associations for women of all ages, females of all ages, like Ndem, which are the water societies, or Nim, it's called Nim among the Ajagam. And so, as I've been learning here for the past 8 years in Africa, I find more commonality than difference. This is the most linguistically dense region in the world. And so you can imagine the complexity. So these kinds of associations are how people communicate. And we're going to see this today with the Cubans and Ekpe USA. Now, during the transatlantic slave trade, enslaved people from cross river were brought all over the Americas. There's a Calabar in Brazil. There's a Calabar high school in Jamaica. There are Carabali from the 1600s in Colombia, in Venezuela, in Santo Domingo. But in Cuba, in the 1800s, the Ekpe Leopard Society was recreated as a mutual aid society to defend the communities who were in a very terrible situation. And this is a painting from the National Museum in Havana. These are what they called cabildos, or nation groups, during the colonial era, and they were based on ethnicity and common languages. And this one was known as Caravali from Calabar. It was called in Cuba, Ekpe was called Abakua, probably after the Abakua community of Calabar. And it's the only institution I know of that was created by Africans to buy each other out of slavery within the legal system of the colony. That is, as a mutual aid society, they collected dues, and with that money they bought the freedom of their enslaved compatriots. So please correct me if there's another institution like that, but I don't know of any other one in the history of the Americas. This is a detail of that painting, and the two themes I'll talk about today are the relationship of Ekpe with women, the issue of gender, which is very, very important and misunderstood. And then another theme is the use of the drum to bring out the mask. The mask represents an ancestor, and an ancestor just can't come out anyhow. It has to be guided with very specific technique. Now, one reason why in Cuba there is so much information about West Africa is that since at least the early 1800s, and probably before, Africans wrote manuscripts to document their language and culture and masquerades. And this is a wonderful example, 1877. And this is not the original, it's a copy. So these things are passed on and copied. And these are not in any library in Cuba. They're not, the intellectual class does not have access to this. These are maintained within initiation systems. And I just want to show you one thing with the map here. There's a place called Oban, right there. You see the Oban Hills? And when you look at this manuscript, you will see Efi Obani, which is likely the source of that. And in these manuscripts are very specific, detailed maps about ethnicity in the Cross River, not to mention lots of language and so on. So this is Efo, which are the Efut, known as Balondo in Cameroon, and the Efi are the Efik. We've got Oban up here, Ibibio down here, and so on and so on. So apart from the writing of African language in Roman alphabet, we have a whole different system of codes, which is African derived. And this is the Insidri language, which we see here, and I wrote down here, African literacy for those with 4 eyes. That means one doesn't learn this stuff until you're initiated. And that is then they say you have 4 eyes. You can see the mystic side of things. And what I just want to point out here is we see a serpent, we see a crocodile. These represent the water societies. We see the leopard, which is this Ekpe society. So in other words, in this so-called male society, there is always acknowledgement of women and the power of women. And that's something that's very important. So we have these esoteric. I'll show you a drawing from Cuba. There's a series of these. And the original one was supposed to have been drawn by an African-born person and in the early 1900s. So what we see here is a society, really. Here's the Cross River with the sun rising. We see one domicile with a circle, one with a square. These are markers for different tribes. So we see multiplicity of tribes. We see a leader in a yamba with the leopard skin. We see a woman with a jar, and so on and so on. So there's a social story here that the Cubans can talk about for a week without stopping. There's a lot of information here, but there's another way to read this, which is as a mystic sign. This whole thing is a mystic sign. And this is what's behind that painting. This was a signature used to found the Abakua Ekpe society in Cuba in the 1800s. And here we see the same serpent, which is the serpent is a river, an undulating river. We see the power of the ancestors here. This is, if you know Robert Farris Thompson's work, 4 Moments of the Sun, this is exactly what this is. It's also the form of a masked dancer. It's a human form with a head, a chest piece. This is the umbilical area here. And so if we look at this again, we see, here's the serpent. The water is always metaphoric for this is where the ancestors live, and so essentially the ancestors are being called upon to bring life to the community, because the sun is not really a sun, it represents the life of the community, really the voice of Ekpe, which is the center of the culture. So if we are looking, if we begin to look at the codes like this, we get some very important information for this issue of cultural transmission. The first aspect of the myth is about a river. And I'm going to show that a photo of the original river where Ekpe was supposed to have been founded centuries ago. But what I've done, thinking of the digital repatriation project that Amy Stables and I are doing, where we're bringing photographs from here and bringing them back to Calabar for information from African cultural specialists, I'm doing the same thing with these images. So I'm bringing images from Africa to Cuba, the masters are commenting on them, and then I'm bringing this to Africa, and so we have a conversation going. And you're going to hear a recording now from a Cuban master.
Ordán es finan puku, aguanarío de Camá. Tabú de tan se sonó que río Ordán.
So he's giving just a snippet of a huge body of literature about the importance of this river and what happened in the river. And a fish was heard in the river. And this is the woman who found that fish, and she's considered the founder of Ekpe society. Hey, Benkama Morowa. Angel's going to come and read this for us, because this is the text written here.
Arriba, becama. Becama. Son cañosos así. Son cañosos así. Sancanto manalto dirá, sancanto manalto mueve, sancanto manalto beso a su guru. Cuando lleguen ellos por tacho de homo son como ferio, un eroquitano y un mañón compadre. Lo que fue como caer en Abacha, hombre. Sí, carne, pues sí, carne, toda. Ah, sí, carne, pues sí, carne, toda. Sí, carne, pues sí, carne, toda. Oh, yo.
Iba, becama. Becama. Se le encañó su así.
Ya yo.
Agua viene, baibo. Si can es mumio. Si can gordan es cobio tanse. Me fi. Agua yo. El de Arapanam de oro. Arapanam de oro, no pecosi. Abakua. Fi. Efo. Oru. Obane obvio tanse. Si can boko. Manambo erume. Erume divo, acama divo, eres yo, obvio Usagaré, yo.
Wow. Believe me, this doesn't happen every day. This is the result of 20 years of intensive work in this culture, because even many of these books are not seen except for high-level initiates. That's the level at which this culture has been protected. One of the interesting things in this for me is that this woman, Sikan, the princess Sikan, you see her calabash. You see on her left foot there is a red fiber tied to it, and we're going to see this in a photograph from Nigeria in a minute. In a rural village in Nigeria, these are the leaders of the Idud Rainbow Society. And these women are descendants, they're descended from the founders of this village. And I was very privileged to learn about this community. Somebody, an Ekpe member, read my book in Calabar, and he began to help me go out into the hinterlands and meet people. You see they have the white across the eyes, with which Chris Kramer was talking about as the moonshine. This is they have the four eyes, the mystic vision. And it just so happens that the sacred object of this group is the same dried calabash of the Cuban myth. And here they are in a funerary event, dancing with their gourd, power. But now what happens is that essentially the same myth in Cuba is being performed here. Every 7 years in this community, they have a ceremony called Ekpe, coming from the bush. This is a ceremony to reaffirm the autonomy of the community. And so for 2 months, there's all kinds of processions, and people are looking for the mystic leopard. But the men can't find it. What they have to do is beg the women from the Idud Rainbow Society, and they have to feed them royal foods for a couple of months to appease the women. And then the women come out and help the men capture the mystic Ekpe. And you see around her left ankle the red fiber there. So now she's just come to inspect the situation. She's not ready yet to do what the men want. And you see they're all there waiting, the ancestors and the living men. Then she will come back with an offering. The offering is brought to the river. and then Ekpe can come from the bush. So we see these issues of gender are very often seen in balanced forms. There's always got to be balance in African traditions, and there is no Ekpe without the women's water society. It doesn't happen. And even look at the way the men are standing behind her with their feet close together, with humility.
Pero con cagua foten que guaso se menino cagua coña avisoro. Dice la voz de tan se viene dentro del buio. En cagua foten que viene dentro del buio.
He's saying that the voice of the sacred fish is inside the gourd. And this is a funerary event in the same village, and they are dancing this gourd. And just one last example of women's power in men's issues. This is the Ntoi, which effectively the Ayamba, the head of Ekpe, of King Kwa in Calabar. He's being coronated. He's wearing bark cloth, which is the original cloth of the people of that area. He's sitting on civet skin, which represents the leopard. He's got leopard on his head, and he's sitting on the Ukara cloth of Ekpe. But in his hand, he's holding a gourd. This is the last thing bestowed upon him to confirm his coronation. It's given to him by the Queen Mother. And it represents the community. Without that gourd given to him by the women, he cannot rule. And if he's irresponsible, it will be taken away from him. And his rule will be over. Now, in the same wonderful rural village, it's in the area of Ogep, where Gitti has been doing a lot of work. This is the new Yam Festival, and the new Yam Festival is about the fertility of the land, the fertility of the people, abundance, and it's a wonderful celebration to thank the ancestors and the gods for the good harvest. But look at the women here. On their bellies all have coded signs. And I'm going to show you this one close up right now. This is actually a cosmogram, the same 4 moments of the sun with the umbilical right in the center. That's the source of creation, which curiously is the same design as this one for the foundation of the Ekpe society in Cuba. So you see we have women at the center of creation, obviously. But it turns out that this cosmogram is used by the Ayamba of that community. This is the Ayamba's house. And so the power of rebirth in Ekpe, of initiation in Ekpe, is patterned on the original woman founder, as I'm reading it. This is in Calabar, it's a procession called Ekpe Comes from the Bush. And the theme here is the staff. This is the Ayamba holding the staff known as Moño, in Cuba called Muñón. And behind it is a leopard skin covering Ukara cloth. And this is they call it an Ekpe house, and inside is the voice. And look at how they're protecting this thing. Nobody if you're not a member, you can't get close to this at all. And as this staff, this ceremony is done when a big chief dies. So essentially it is, the king is dead, long live the king. They're replacing the deceased with a new one. It's about the continuity of the culture and the community. And in this ceremony, these dancers are there. They're called Ekpe in Calabar, and it means leopard tail. This is a photograph from the El Southern Archives with the same, this is the Ayamba with his Moño staff right there. So in this Ekpe from the Bush ceremony, there's always young men with drums which are not played. They represent the womb. There is a man with a leopard tail with an arrow, which represents the male principle, and they're dancing. It's the dance of creation, of regeneration. And here they are in the 1970s, coming from the bush, the arrow and the drum. And this, you see the same cosmogram is written on this drum head. So, and here they are dancing. Dancing. And dancing.
Efimere mo mi yamba moro ayam seribu. Apota chendi mo mosongo waro bonandiva emai bongo basaro ko tanse bongo meta. Ana merin befen beun biasu kurunavia yamba sike mai moro ayam seribu. Apota chendi mo mosongo bongo nandiva. Abasi mendo kairan en borea tereri maepwe. Moro ayam sabetan betan ekoisese koi efiongeribu mosongo. Y moro ayam satanambiro efimere mo moviae. Moro ayam satanambiro efimere mo moviae. Moro ayam satanambiro. Oyayo. Para natan chemia. Efimere mo kani mauya. Efimere mo kani mauya. Efimere mo kani mauya. Para natan chemia. Efimere mo kani mauya. Efimere mo kani mauya. Moro ayam sakani mauya.
This is a drawing from 1882 in Cuba, and I've asked the Cuban master to comment on this issue of the Morowa, the chanter, who holds a drum in his hand to bring out the ancestors. Because that's what they hear a drum, or they hear a rattle. And this is a photograph I took in Cameroon, Ngolo land, last March. And this is the last photograph of my presentation today, because I want to leave room. We're going to dance the masks. I want to leave room for our brethren to do their stuff. And we can talk, I'm sure I've confused you thoroughly. I can answer questions later. Hey, Ben Kama.
Arriba, Cama. Ven, Cama. Es un caño así. Es un caño así. Viene que me to chanana ro yo foco gente misma aquí songo que ñongo grupo ro Juan que mo otro chanana ro yo foco gente misma. Ey. Bien como. Ah, bien como. Bien como, oh, yo,
Guanaribo, ya yo,
oh, ya yo,
We have other presentations coming, and I'm not exactly sure what they are, but they're preparing in the back. Are there any questions? Anyone have anything to say? Yes, please go ahead, Amy.
I just had a detailed question. On that engraving you showed of the Cuban performance, the masquerade, he was offering a green leaf, the herb, to the woman.
Yeah.
And I see this gentleman here carrying. What is the significance?
This is, they call it, in ethnic Calabar, it's called Obote. It's a certain tree. It's the Ekpe leaf. So it's like a flag. It's the flag of the society. It means that mask is authorized by Ekpe. So it's the authorization. It's the passport. I think Pierre Végier, the great French photographer and scholar, said the Yoruba quote, the white man reads paper, black man reads leaf. So really, that's a sign. Yes, sir, sorry.
I just wanted to say that in 1958, 59 in the metropolitan Washington area, the first signs of African culture was Afro-Cuban culture. It was not the djembe, it was not all the Senegambian instruments, but it was what we see here today. The chants for the Ekpe society in recording, as well as by way of people coming to this area. So we've had a large influx of so-called Hispanic people. But in the late 50s and early 60s, these were people that were coming from Cuba here and bringing the culture. So it started with Afro-Cuban culture, and then it progressed.
Yeah, wonderful. How lucky you are. Yes, sir.
I was looking at the snake that you had, the serpent, and the description that you gave. Have you been able, through your research, to make correlations between the Cuban cosmology as well as the Haitian cosmology? Because the Haitian Loa, they have a Loa deity, Dambala.
Yeah.
Is there any correlation between those two?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the correlation, of course, is Africa, because all the African traditions in Cuba have a serpent, and it's always a protective, it's a blessed animal. A lot of the shrines have serpents in them, and they're protective, just like Dambala. Yeah. So it's a good thing. Yes, doctor.
We are clearly in the presence of extraordinarily important, one would say sacred, activity. But I also rise to acknowledge a man of such extraordinary connections between all of the complexities of African music and culture and what happens here in the diaspora. For me, an extraordinary hero, one of the true masters of Black improvisational music. We are so honored to have with us Randy Weston. Professor Wayne. Yes.
Come on, Yeti. You want to say something? Okay.
Please.
Yeah.
Because of great natural.
Yo.
Yeah, because of the great Mrs. Gillespie, Mario Bowser. And I was at Max Roach's house in the late 1940s. and I heard a channel also from Cuba. And when I heard that drum, it changed my whole entire life. And I just did a concert with Candido, 91 years old now, still playing beautifully. Can you tell me something about the society that channel is from in Cuba? You know anything about that particular society?
That's the one I've been talking about here.
Yeah, that's channel.
That's it, yeah. Well, thank you, Maestro, for mentioning the name Chano Pozo, who is dear to all of us who know about this culture. Chano Pozo was an Abakua member.
That's right. From
the Munyange Fo Lodge, that's a Balondo Source Lodge, and he was a master drummer, dancer, composer, and he, his songs will be sung forever. He came to New York in '46, he met Dizzy Gillespie, and it changed Dizzy's life. Their compositions were part of the foundation of bebop music. Yes, absolutely. And the sound of that man's drum is that's serious soul power. So Chano, and unfortunately Chano died very soon after that, but Dizzy throughout his life continued that legacy of Chano Pozo. And it's a name we always evoke, and we always teach people about the importance of Chano Pozo, because it was an infusion into US jazz. It's changed our society, really. Yeah, and so all of us remember Chano Pozo. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this interestingly enough, so the bottom line, what is this thing saying? What is the relevance of all this? And I came to give testimony about what occurred this afternoon before I got here. I was, thank you, man, appreciate it. Just to bring it down to the nitty-gritty so we get it, so, and demystify the whole scenario and bring common sense to it, so everybody gets in knowing why we're here. I was at a senior center this morning, 11 o'clock, and I was talking to the senior citizens, only 5 of them. They were ladies that were teaching them drumming. It was the first class. And I was talking to them, telling them exactly about this, the theme of this. And I had no clue that I was going to be here. While in the middle of my class, I got a phone call from her telling me about this. So I wound up here. So what does it mean to us as human beings, and about our walk on this earth, and our attitudes, our stupidities, ignorance, inability to relate and respect and dignify each other in the names of all kinds of attitudes and mindsets, which amount to what? Zero. Enough said.
Digo, 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 Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Tama, digo, 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 Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, 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 Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, 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 Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, Yuanza digo, 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 Azuko Bakariongo, Azuko bakariongo, azuko bakariongo.
Digo, sugo bakariongo.
Digo, azere, sugo bakariongo.
Digo, sugo bakariongo.
Sugo bakariongo, sugo bakariongo.
Digo, sugo bakariongo.
Sugo bakariongo, sugo bakariongo.
Digo, sugo bakariongo.
Jipario, bagongo. Bagongo. Hacer vía otón, hacer vía Abakua. Bion endavio, bion birama, ya fanzón, en yugue barancono. Ya fanzón yugue afogara. Atrocopocuamo caerén. Azúcar aguanti yene bueno avanzado me hacer el grupo robón. Indio bon, banyenio bon. Como neguaro miñam, añongumba coro. El grupo no seria avanzado miñam, bon queré. El pepo Cameroon, Ekpe USA, el grupo la Guanabecura Mendo, Guanabecura en Caura. Y ten vara, acura su con Bacariongo, Bacariongo efi, Bacariongo efo. Mocongo ma huyo, mocongo mon apotacho, mocongo ma chévere.
Hacer, chaya camongongo. Hacer, chaya camongongo. Hacer. Oya yo, hacer.
Yamba, yambumbe tinde, yamba, yambumbe fo. Yamba, yambumbe tinde, yamba, yambumbe fo, yambumbe fi. Yamba, aburukawa, mina, kunyongo, angongo, ya, angongo, ye. Yamba, nando, ge, awasi, anando, ge.
Yamba, nando, ge, awasi, anando, ge. Yamba, nando, ge. Oya yo, yamba, nando, ge.
Y sueribo, el primer muy antiguo, vacío con el hierro. Y suese semilla cara, orua para acá, condomina me fe. Y sueribo, condomina me fe.
Y sueribo, condomina me fe. Y sueribo, condomina me fe.
Y su negwe endue, kiko guanamuto. Y su negwe en brachimán, y su todo eco, y su nataviande. Y su negwe tarauyo kondo.
Y su negwe tarauyo kondo. Y su negwe tarauyo kondo.
Y su negwe tarauyo kondo. Y su negwe, y su todo eco. Y su negwe a chechere muño.
Y su negwe tarauyo kondo.
Viva Libabe, Kama.
Guau.
Kama.
Guau.
Silencoñoso así.
Ya yo.
Silencoñoso así.
Ya yo.
Kama, donde vivo
This is a present for Ekpe USA from Cuban Abakua.
Wow.
Yeah, Shashi boy. Put them up. Where's the microphone? I can see it. Gracias.
I work with me.
Gracias.
I work.
Gracias. I think that's all I can say at this point. Thank you very much, our Cuban brothers. I would like to make only one remark about what they have said there. If you listen, you will hear one word they were saying there, Abasia. And then when you go to where it comes from, overseas, it's God, Almighty God, along the cross river there, starting from Cameroon, going across, is known as overseas, or Abasi. That is to say that there is no conflict between the Ekpe society and the church. No contradiction. There is no conflict. And even if before the Christian religion came to Africa, our people prayed through different gods, but they know that all that leads to the Almighty God, who is known as Obasi. They believe in the monolithic God. So there is no conflict between the Ekpe society, which is a way of living of the people, and the church. So today, you can go to church and belong to the Ekpe, and there's no problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our Cameroonian guest would like to perform a song. Well, I beg your indulgence. I know some of you got to go and all that, but Bate Nico, the great Bate Nico from SW de Camerún.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wow, wow.
Wow.
What a wonderful thing. You can see they don't want to stop. They don't want to stop. So obviously they've got to come back here somehow, some way.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for being here. Please pray for our project.
Right.
Let's see how we can come back and continue.
All right.